Welcome to this overview video on the top-down design process in Creo Parametric. And this is a lecture style video. There will be no demonstration. So what exactly is top-down design? It's a process for maximizing design intent in our assembly models. Design intent is all about building additional information and intelligence into our models so that when we make changes later on, our parts will update in ways that we plan for and ways that we expect. And in top-down design, we're focused on controlling geometry, parameters, and the relationships between our different components so that we have our design intent built in. And so there are a lot of different goals in top-down design, and some of them include simplifying the design process in a collaborative environment. Typically with your products, you have a team, they might be distributed in different locations, and so it's important that you're able to work together to design your product. Also, one of the big ones is we want to make it easier to implement changes. In other words, if we have a big design change, we don't want to have to go into a whole lot of individual models and make the changes and make sure that everything fits together. It's much better if we can change one or two locations and have all that information ripple out the way that we want it to. And also, we want to find the balance between creativity, control, and speed. And that's always a challenge in different design programs, because if you lean more heavily towards one than the other, then you're going to end up suffering. For example, if you exert too much control, you're limiting the amount of creativity that your engineers can use when they're designing the different components, and it'll end up slowing you down. If you go too fast, you lose control and also the ability to come up with unique solutions. In order to explain top-down design, it helps to explain the opposite, which is called bottom-up design. And bottom-up design is something that people learn typically as children when they're first playing with Legos or Tinker Toys, Lincoln Logs. And with bottom-up design, you start off with individual objects. In Creo Parametric, they are parts, and you build features in the parts to define their shape. And then you put those parts together in an assembly. And when you place that assembly into higher level assemblies, it's typically referred to as a subassembly. So again, you're making your parts, you're putting them into assemblies, and then you're putting your assemblies into higher level assemblies until you get to the top level. And there's nothing inherently wrong with bottom-up design. For a lot of products, that is a perfectly fine methodology for building them. But once you start getting to a certain level of complexity in terms of number of components, your geometry, the number of people that you have involved, top-down design provides a number of different advantages. So let's take a look at the general process for top-down design. Again, usually you're starting by creating the top-level assembly first. You're saying, hey, this is our product. Let's create that. And then within the top level assembly, you're going to define the product structure. You're going to lay out the different sub-assemblies and then sub-assemblies within sub-assemblies, any different parts you have in the sub-assemblies, or maybe even at the top level. Essentially, you're starting out by laying out the bill of materials so you have a plan of what you need to design in order to build your product. And very importantly in top-down design, we want to create some objects at the top level that allow us to control our models. And those involve skeletons and notebooks. And I'll talk more about those on the next slide. And so after we create these top-level objects that contain our design information, we need to get that design information down to the lower levels, into our sub-assemblies and into our individual components. And so we have data sharing features to communicate geometry and declare to communicate the information in notebooks down to individual parts. And again, you're creating these skeletons in notebooks at the top level, and as necessary, you will create skeletons and notebooks in your various sub-assemblies. And once we've distributed that information, then it's time to populate our assemblies. And actually, let me correct myself. I want to back up. I want to stress that this is not a linear process. It's not like you have to do these actions in a particular order. You may jump around and revisit these steps. So this is not linear. So let me correct myself. At different times in the process, you will be populating your assembly. For example, you will be placing additional components in the assembly. Those might be commercial off-the-shelf components. They might be components that you leverage from an existing design. Those might be parts that come from your suppliers and vendors and subcontractors. They may be parts that were designed separately outside of the top-down design process. So you'll put those into the assembly and you'll build the individual part features. So for example, if you've shared information from a skeleton down to an individual part, you'll use that geometry that was shared in order to design the part features. So again, I want to stress, this is not a linear process. You'll be jumping around through these different steps. So let's talk about some of the different functionality that you have in Creo Parametric for implementing this. So there is the component creation commands, which allow you to define the product structure. So you can create your sub-assemblies, your parts, and even bulk items. And bulk items represent components that you're not going to design geometry for, but you want to account for in your bill of materials. And those can include things like paint or different lubricants. Anything that you don't physically want to model, you can do with a bulk item. We also have skeletons, which are special kinds of parts that capture the geometry that we want to use to control multiple different components. And they can be used to define geometry, and they can also be used to locate the components with your various assembly constraints. We have data sharing features, which allow us to communicate the geometry from the skeleton and any other parts or assemblies into target parts so we can use them as a reference for creating more geometry. Notebooks allow us to consolidate all the different important dimensions and parameters that affect our product or can affect multiple components in the assembly. And once we have these different dimensions and parameters in our notebooks, we can use the declare command, which will allow all those dimensions and parameters to be available into whatever objects that we declare them to. And we can write relations, and all that relations are, they're just mathematical equations or expressions that relate some dimensions and parameters in your model to other dimensions and parameters. And so you can write relations at the assembly level, you can write relations at the part level, and you can write relations between those notebook parameters that were declared into a target part and the feature dimensions in that target part. So let's talk about a few of these in more detail. So for defining your product structure in assembly mode, there is a create command, which gives you a dialog box. And in here, you can create parts, you can create sub-assemblies. You can also create your skeletons from here and those bulk items. There's an option for envelope, but those are typically not used in top-down design. Those are more often used with simplified reps. So, as I mentioned, a skeleton is a special kind of part model, and it's going to contain typically non-solid features. You can put solid features in there, but it's generally recommended that they should contain only non-solid geometry, in other words, surfaces. And they'll typically contain a lot of datum features like planes, axes, points, coordinate systems, and so on. And a big part is they can contain data sharing features, and we'll talk more about that. Data sharing features include features like published geometry, where you can say, these are the different surfaces that I want you to grab from the skeleton to use to design different sub-assemblies or individual components. Also, a lower level skeleton might grab geometry from a higher level skeleton. With skeletons, since these are sort of hypothetical, they're sort of like the conceptual framework for your different assemblies that you're designing, you're not going to manufacture them, so they are automatically filtered from your bills of material. And so some of the typical uses of a skeleton model are to define the overall shape of your product. And in aerospace, where I currently work, a lot of times that's referred to as the OML, or the outer mold line. And previously, when I worked in consumer electronics, that was referred to as the industrial design, or the ID. Also, you can use them for defining the different boundaries or space claims or envelopes between different components. And another big one is defining the interfaces between different parts or different subassemblies. And if you're defining a mechanism, you might want to define the lines of action for your different components as they move. And as I mentioned, you can use them for defining mechanisms. And with mechanisms, you can lay out, again, how different components are able to move inside of your assembly. And a big one, if you work in routed systems like I have, a lot of times when you are doing cabling or piping, you need to grab references from the assembly so you know where to route your different wires and your different pipes through a model. And so here are a few visual examples of some skeletons, starting in the upper left-hand corner. Here you can see this one is very simple, just a bunch of surfaces and some datum planes and even some datum axes in there that allow us to lay out where different components are going to be. In the upper right, there's an example of some surface modeling to lay out the overall shape for a product. In the lower right, we have an assembly with more than one skeleton, and this is used to define a mechanism. And in the lower left, there is a skeleton that grabs a bunch of references that are used for routing wires and cables. And so data sharing features allow you to, as the name implies, share geometry from one component to another. And so there are features like copy geometry, Shrinkwrap, merge, and inheritance that allow you to take geometry from a target part and put it into a source part. There's another kind of data sharing feature called a publish geometry feature, which is a great way of making your models user-friendly. If you create a skeleton, you can grab the different surfaces or other references that someone might need in a publish geometry feature, and then when they create a copy geometry feature, they just grab the publish geometry feature. I'm not going to go into more detail here because I've got a whole set of videos on data sharing features, and there are reference documents available, including a free download that you can get from my website that goes through all these different data sharing features in more detail. Here's an example of what a notebook looks like, and it looks a lot like a drawing. And so some of the different information it contains includes non-parametric 2D sketch geometry. Then you can put dimensions on that sketch geometry. You can also create parameters. There are balloons, and the balloons help you lay out your bill of materials essentially, and you can put in notes, and essentially any information that you want to capture for your design can go inside of this notebook. And then when you declare the notebook to different objects like assemblies and parts, all the dimensions and parameters from the notebook become available in the part or the assembly, and then you can write relations to drive the part or assembly dimensions from the notebook dimensions and parameters. And in this way, if you make a change to the notebook, then all the connected models will automatically update. And that, again, gets to the heart of the power of top-down design, having these central repositories of our design information and our design intent. So when we have to make changes, we make changes to those central locations and our models update. So here is an infographic, and you can download this from my website, and it sort of lays out the assembly structure for your product with different top-down design objects. And so at the top level, we have our top-level assembly, and we have notebooks that are declared to the top-level assembly, which makes those dimensions and parameters available at the top level. We also have a skeleton at the top levels of the assembly or a product. And then we have our different sub-assemblies. And the subassemblies might have their own subassembly skeleton, and they could have data sharing features that grab geometry from the top level skeleton, and they could also be declared to different notebooks. And then the subassemblies will have their own components. They could have data sharing features that drive them from the subassembly skeleton. They could have declarations to the subassembly notebooks. And so again, we can drive the geometry and the dimensions in our individual components from our top level objects like the skeletons and also the notebooks. For managing top-down design, there are a number of different tools available to you, and on this slide I'm just going to mention 3 of them. First off, you have reference creation control. When you're using top-down design, you are creating what are called external references, and reference creation control allows you to manage whether objects can make external references and whether other objects can make external references to them. You also have the reference viewer for examining different references and dependencies in your model. You can also use it for finding if there are what are called circular references in your model, and you can even break some dependencies from the reference viewer. And also for your data sharing features, you have something called update control. So you can, like the name implies, control when changes to the objects that are referenced are going to be propagated to the data sharing features and therefore propagated to any features that are based off of them. Anyhow, I hope you enjoyed this video. For more information, please visit www.creowindchill.com. If you like this video, please give it a thumbs up and click the subscribe button to be informed when new videos are uploaded. Thank you very much.